I might as well make a video talking about this subject because, I keep getting notifications letting me know that several people are uploading videos talking about this thing. I've seen at least 4 people upload the video talking about the same thing. So let's talk about it. So Eddie Hearn said that Anthony Joshua, if Deontay Wilder decides to, I guess, not take the fight with Anthony Joshua after the Jarrell Miller fight, and after if he gets past Dominic Breazeale, Mr. Deontay Wilder, if he does not get the fight, or if he does not, if he basically ducks the fight with Anthony Joshua, the unification fight, then it's gonna be difficult for Eddie Hearn to make the fight with Deontay Wilder because of the fact that Anthony Joshua has so many mandatories. He says that Eddie Hearn wants to have this fight happen next after Wilder gets past Dominic Breazeale and after Jarrell Miller gets past. And after Anthony Joshua gets past Jarrell Miller, because if not, he's going to have to defend his belt against Kubrat Pulev, who's one of his mandatories for one of his belts. Alexander Usyk, who's another mandatory for one of Anthony Joshua's belts. Those are the guys that Anthony Joshua has to fight if he does not get the Deontay Wilder fight next. Because Eddie Hearn says, obviously, if he wanted to, Anthony Joshua could vacate the belt and not fight these dudes. But then if he fought Deontay Wilder down the line, it wouldn't be an undisputed fight, and because it would just be a unification fight, but it wouldn't be for the undisputed heavyweight crown, right? So Eddie Hearn doesn't want Anthony Joshua to, be vacating no belt. So he's going to, I guess, tell him, or tell him, listen, give him advice and say, listen, don't vacate your belts, defend your belts against Kubrat Pulev and Alexander Usyk, which I personally would be picking Anthony Joshua to beat. Kubrat Pulev, in my opinion, is already up there in age, and he's not a big puncher. I know he beat that dude in his last fight, but that dude is the dude that got destroyed in like 2 rounds against Jarrell Big Baby Miller. That dude hadn't really done anything in his career, so I would be picking Anthony Joshua to beat him. I actually think Alexander Usyk is a more competitive fight than Kubrat Pulev, just because I think he's a better talent than Kubrat Pulev. But I would still be picking AJ just because I think AJ is naturally the bigger guy. Obviously, Kubrat Pulev is a heavyweight. Anthony Joshua is a heavyweight. Alexander Usyk is a cruiserweight. Obviously, I believe he's going to be fighting Carlos Takam. So first of all, I want to see how he does against Carlos Takam. So I could be the I don't see Kubrat Pulev beating AJ. I just think there's a size difference anyway. So he's basically saying that this fight needs to happen this year. All right, this fight with AJ and Deontay Wilder needs to happen this year. Because if it doesn't, we're going to have to wait until Anthony Joshua defends his mandatory he basically goes through his mandatories against Kubrat Pulev and Alexander Usyk, right? Which means he wouldn't be fighting Deontay Wilder until probably late next year, because let's say he fights Kubrat Pulev September, he beats him. Then let's say he fights Alexander Usyk April next year, he beats him. Then maybe in September he could fight Deontay Wilder, but then I would imagine Deontay Wilder would then have mandatories. Let's say the WBC makes Luis Ortiz versus Dillian White fight for a title eliminator for the WBC championship this September. And then let's say Dillian White beats Luis Ortiz. And now Deontay Wilder is forced to face Dillian White, right? Then he'll be fighting him probably next year, 2020, right? Unless the fight gets made, unless like the WBC orders it to happen like sometime in June, then Deontay Wilder could fight Dillian White or Luis Ortiz, the winner of that fight, later on this year. But I saw like the dude who wrote the article about reporting this news. He was like, well, Eddie Hearn, Anthony Joshua could ask for an exemption, which is basically like a pass. Like, listen, to basically not fight the mandatories for a more significant fight. So it's like, basically, listen, I know that I have to defend my. I know that the Kubrat Pulev is my mandatory, but I want to become undisputed at heavyweight. So I want to get this exemption. Can I fight with Deontay Wilder to become undisputed? And then when I beat Deontay Wilder, then I'll fight Kubrat Pulev, right? And then I guess he has to do that. He has to say that to the sanctioning body that Kubrat Pulev is mandatory. See, I'm getting dumb. I watch too much blue boxing, man. I watch too much blue boxing. I guess if he wants to get an exemption, he has to go through the sanctioning bodies that Kubrat Pulev is mandatory for, right? So if they approve it, then he's going to be I saw the writer of the article write that. He was like, Anthony Joshua could. And by the way, the writer of the article sounded like an Anthony Joshua hater. He just came across as a hater, like, well, Anthony Joshua, he could do this. What are you talking about? But anyway, he's basically saying, well, he could use that to basically not fight, not defend for his belts against his mandatories, just to get the unification fight with Deontay Wilder, which is true. And I wouldn't see why Eddie Hearn would not want to do that, considering the fact that Eddie Hearn wants Anthony Joshua to have a unification fight with Deontay Wilder. But remember, it takes two to tango. What if Deontay Wilder says no? What if he gets past Jerome Miller, AJ, and then Deontay Wilder gets past Dominic Breazeale? I know 100% Eddie Hearn is going to be trying to make that fight happen immediately after the Breazeale and Miller fight. He's going to be trying to make the unification fight again. I know it. Because he always does that. He always tries to make a unification fight when both of these guys don't have fights. Let's say Deontay Wilder ducks it. Let's say Deontay Wilder does what he always does and says no and asks for the 50-50 split. And then, Eddie Hearn says no. I hope he doesn't, though. And then, because I want that fight to get made. And then Deontay Wilder says, no, I'll go elsewhere. And Deontay Wilder goes to fight somebody else, right? And then, what would Eddie Hearn do? He would put AJ against probably Usyk or Kubrat Pulev. So, again, it's not looking like good news for if you guys are hopeful for the Anthony Joshua versus Deontay Wilder unification fight. I told you guys a long time ago. I made a video literally 11 months ago, almost a year ago. Crazy how fast time passes. Almost a year ago, I made a video saying that Anthony Joshua and Deontay Wilder will not fight until the year 2020. And every day that passes, my prediction comes closer and closer to becoming true. These guys, it definitely looks like they're going to fight in 2020. If they don't fight in 2020, that's just going to be a damn shame because I think by the time it's 2021, I think by then people will start using the excuse that Deontay Wilder's an over-the-hill fighter just because he'll be in his late 30s at that point. And I really don't want that. I really don't want to hear if AJ fights Deontay Wilder by 2021. I really don't want to hear the bullshit excuses that Deontay Wilder was over the hill and that's the only reason he lost. That's why I wanted them to fight this year because Wilder's still more in his prime now than he would be 2 years from now. So they really couldn't use that excuse. And I'm all about trying to give fighters full credit for winning. And I would do the same thing to Deontay Wilder. If Deontay Wilder beat AJ right now, I would be giving him credit. But let's say he fights AJ, 2-3 years from now, and AJ hasn't been looking that good in his last recent fights, it's going to take away from the credit, right? The same thing goes for Deontay Wilder. So I really hope these two could fight. The latest is 2020. But again, that's the thing when you have several belts. When you have several belts, you have several mandatories. You have several people you got to fight. And when it comes to Anthony Joshua, he fights twice a year. So let's say he has to defend his mandatories against two. Let's say he has to defend his IBF, his WBO belt against the mandatory for that sanctioning body, which is USYK. But then he has to defend his IBF strap for Kubrat Pulev. So let's see if I was gonna say hopefully Eddie Hearn and Anthony Joshua acts for like an exemption, but the thing is, first they have to see if Deontay Wilder wants to make the fight happen. What's the point of asking for a sanctioning body for an exemption to allow them to make a unification fight with Deontay Wilder if Deontay Wilder says nope, I don't want to fight. You're not giving me enough money. We're not gonna happen. The fight is not gonna happen. So what's the point, right? So that's all I have to report for now. I'm gonna try to make as much videos as I can today because I'm just trying to grind today. I'm trying to report as much boxing news as possible. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. I'm out. Bye bye. Subscribe.